Greetings, everybody. My name is Tommy the Game Master. Last week, something happens that happens to Switch owners every 2 to 3 months. We get new games on the Switch Online, followed by something else that happens every 3 months. People complaining about the terrible game quality of the new games we just got. The games over the last year since I bought my Switch last August haven't been exactly what I would call great. Don't get me wrong, when I go back to the initial offerings, I see some really good games. I see games from my youth that I would gladly pay $20 a year for to play on my Switch and not have to drag out my SNES or my SNES Mini to play. Star Fox, Zelda, Mario World. On the NES, we also have some classics. Super Mario Bros., Zelda, and River City Ransom. But after that, it gets really mediocre, with games like Tough Enough, which isn't what's on the box. The box art says, "Hey punk, are you tough enough?" With a mistake like that, you know the quality you're in for. And then there's also gyms like Doomsday Warrior, which is just complete crap. So why aren't we getting good games for the Switch Online? Well, let's find out. First, let me say one thing in my opinion. The quality of Switch Online games being released over the past year isn't completely terrible. It's mediocre for sure, but there are some hidden gems in there. If you're complaining about no good games on the Switch Online, and if you haven't played games like Penalty Pone, which was Tetris Attack originally, then you're missing out on a good two-player puzzle game. Yes, Nintendo switching out the little pixies for Mario characters back in the 90s when the American game market was dominated by teen boys and Sega was eating Nintendo's lunch on that front was a great idea. Changing the name to a franchise owned by a third-party company and not by you was a bad one, especially when the gameplay has nothing to do with said franchise. Anyways, that game is super addictive and worth checking out, even if the characters and language aren't dubbed. Another hidden gem that is certainly worth playing, an underrated NES game, is called Vice Project Doom. If you haven't played this game and you considered yourself an NES file as a kid, then you don't know what you're missing. This game is an underrated gem. Released at the same time as the Super Nintendo, so it didn't get much fanfare, but the game is a mix of Ninja Gaiden with 8-bit cutscenes and Bayou Billy, mixing in 3 game types. But unlike Billy, which American version sucked, Vice Project Doom here gets it right on 3 types of gameplay. So, there are good games. A few I haven't tried out, like Ignition Factor, I hear is quite good and a very unique game. Also, Joe and Mac is a pretty solid action platformer worth checking out. Also, I like the fact that we do get some games that were originally released only in Japan or Europe. Games I have never tried before. There is some good stuff on the Switch Online. It's just unfortunately not great, and it's not something that's going to catch a lot of people's appeal. The best games out there are kind of niche, to say the least. So, with that said, why aren't we getting some of the big guns like Final Fantasy or Mega Man on Switch Online? Well, here's the #1 reason why, guys. It's the eShop. No, I'm not kidding. It's the eShop. Think about it this way. If you're a third-party company and you could create a package of classic games, because most classic games come in some sort of package nowadays, and release it on all consoles and charge money for it, or B, you could release them on Nintendo Switch Online where Nintendo might kick back a few dollars every once in a while. Which would you do? If you said package on all consoles including the Switch eShop, then you have done what a lot of third-party companies have already done. Let's see here, we got Mega Man, Mega Man X, Castlevania, Contra, and even the likes of Rock and Roll Racing, which would have been another little gem to have released on the Switch Online, are all available for purchase on the eShop. And before anyone says, "Oh, poor Nintendo for having these games not being able to put on Switch Online," I'd say don't. If you drop $20 for one of these collections, Nintendo probably made somewhere between $2 to $5 on that sale. Plus, they still have your Switch Online membership money. So basically, it's the third-party companies know they got a game that is still valuable and worth money. They're not going to be putting it on the Switch Online. They're going to bring it to the eShop. And yes, Final Fantasy and Chrono Trigger fit that bill. Square Enix has remakes of Final Fantasy 5 and 6 on Steam. If they come to the Switch, I have a feeling that's the version we're getting. I do apologize, because I know that's going to cause some backlash, because the character designs on those remakes suck. And of course, there's an updated version of Chrono Trigger 2, so if they come to the Switch, I wouldn't be too surprised if they're released on the eShop for $10 a pop. And the Dragon Warrior games from Square Enix remakes are also available on the eShop, so they're not really going to be available for Nintendo Switch Online, at least not anytime soon. This does leave a pool a bit dry for Nintendo, though. Not a lot of great third-party software for them to put up. Does this mean all hope is lost, or that Nintendo is doing the best it can? No, absolutely not. It just means that gamers should temper their expectations just a tiny bit. But Nintendo can do a lot better. For example, yes, the cream of the crop third-party games may not be coming, but there's a lot of really great B-tier games that could be coming to Nintendo Online from the likes of Capcom and Konami. Final Fight series that hasn't been released as a collection. The SNES game is considered a stripped-down port of the arcade game, but I would take it over some crappy brawlers and action games we have been getting. And 2 and 3 are actually pretty decent fighting games. So, what about Mighty Final Fight, which was a really great NES kind of comic parody port of Final Fight? Those would be great additions for Nintendo Online. Konami's got a Castlevania game in Dracula X that could be brought over, and it's still kind of worth playing, even though it's one of the worst Castlevania games in my opinion, just due to the fact that the difficulty is cranked up to 20, not 10 or 11, but 20, and it's no Rondo of Blood. And since you're releasing Famicom games on the Switch Online, how about getting Konami to release Mad City? AKA a version of Bayou Billy that doesn't suck. So despite a lot of the cream of the crop, the games on the eShop, they still have options, and they still have a lot of better games they could be providing us. Another thing they need to do is focus on the NES. Yes, the Super Nintendo games have aged better. More Super Nintendo games have aged like fine wine than NES games. There are a lot of NES games that were good for their day in the 80s, aren't exactly fun to play in the 2020s. But there's still plenty of good NES games that haven't hit Switched Online service, and Nintendo should be looking at them. Ninja Gaiden 2, Star Tropic 2, which by the way, Nintendo, that's one of yours. Why isn't it on the Switch Online? And these are just a few examples of games that should be on the Nintendo Online from companies that are well established, that aren't Jellico or Natsumi. Speaking about you, Nintendo, I haven't seen any of your games released this year for Switch Online. Last year I did see Donkey Kong Country, and then some Super Famicom games like Mario Picross. But you're not giving us anything good, and you're withholding a lot. Why? I mean, you got Earthbound, which everyone and their kid brother are demanding to be released. But I also see things like the aforementioned Star Tropic 2, SNES versions of Wario Woods and Yoshi Cookies, heck, even Urban Champions if you want this to be a streaming way of having an old school preservation of games. That needs to be in there too. Why aren't you releasing any of your own games for your own subscribers, Nintendo? I've got to ask. So, what are my recommendations for Nintendo? Well, here's a few things I can say. First, release one of your games every time there's a game drop. As I said, it's been months since I've seen a Nintendo release game on the Switch Online. Last really big one was Diddy Kong Quest, although if I was generous I would say Donkey Kong Country 3. It's just I've never cared for that particular game. but release a game that doesn't have to be Earthbound, although I do recommend you do start with Earthbound. It would be better than Urban Champions, but Star Tropics 2 would be a great one. Yoshi's Cookie would not be a terrible game to release either. Second, start focusing on the NES again. There are plenty of really great games that haven't come to the online service, some which are sequel to games that are already released on the NES Switch Online platform. If releasing only one NES game is holding back some quality stuff, then put 2 or 3 on the NES and then limit some of the Super Nintendo games. The consoles shouldn't matter. Quality should. Think about it. Which would you rather have? A game like Star Tropics 2 or another mediocre freaking fighter game or brawlers like Tough Enough or Doomsday Brawler? I think most people would choose the 8-bit Star Tropics 2 over a shitty 16-bit game. Third, start putting up some more consoles on the service. More consoles, more choices, more likely for quality picks. N64 has a ton of first-party software that you wouldn't have to pay anyone for. Mario 64, Ocarina of Time, Pokemon Puzzle League, Mario Kart 64, Mario Party, Mario Tennis, Mario Golf. Do I need to go on? You could also go for Game Boy and Game Boy Advance games, which the Switch would be perfect for, and release games like Mario Land and 2, Wario Land, Metroid 2, and Donkey Kong for the Game Boys. Those would be a really great game selection. Or, if you did step it up to the GBA, you could have things like Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga, Metroid Zero Mission, a whole bunch of Kirby games. And that would be just from you guys. And since not a lot of developers put a lot of GBA games in classic packs, yet the sky would be the freaking limit. And the Switch is perfect for a Game Boy Advance library. And yes, even GameCube games. While I will defend the NES and Super Nintendo as worth being able to play to any 20-year-old who thinks any console released before the turn of millennium is garbage, the good old GameCube hasn't had much re-releases or support in its games. Sure, we got HD remakes of Zelda Wind Waker and Twilight Princess for the Wii U, and Mario Sunshine finally came out for a limited time in the Mario 3D All-Stars. But what about the Mario parties? What about Animal Crossing, Wario World? There were a few Fire Emblem games on it. So there are plenty of potential to tap in here as well from some of your other classic systems, Nintendo. In the end, I think $20 a year for Switch membership is still worth it. With things like Tetris 99, Pac-Man 99, and we do have some really great classic games that were originally released on this platform. But you need to get your butt in gear, Nintendo. Your paid subscribers deserve better than Tough Enough and not some of the other crap that you've been giving us. Anyways, this is Tommy the Game Master signing off. If you agree with me, please share this video. If you have any comments, feel free to leave them down below. I hope to see you guys soon.